So when we talk about hoarding, most of us do so in terms of digital and physical items, more so the latter. We're taking up spaces from thousands of photos and screenshots in iCloud storages to clothes, different stationery, games, makeup, the what if I need this one day and I find out what it's for, wires and cables, etc. But in this video, I'm going to talk about a different kind of hoarding, and that's knowledge hoarding. So this is primarily entirely about books, web page bookmarks, lists, spreadsheets, pinned articles, to be read piles, save this article for later tabs, bookmarks this thread, etc. Come, my love, come join me. And for this conversation, my dog has joined me. Yes, my little boy is here to encourage you about digital hoarding. So, despite my self-awareness with my problem, my ambitions to be knowledgeable always fall incredibly short. I admit that I'm someone who isn't very knowledgeable at all. I am far more successful at collecting the idea of being knowledgeable than I am actually knowledgeable. I have very high aspirations for my brain, which I'm completely unable to meet. So whilst I was on my Notion page recently, I was reorganising different sections and I came across a page that I made called Personal Reading List. On this page, there were only 4 articles on there. Now, evidently I forgot this page ever existed, but Notion tells me that I edited this page 3 years ago, which rather proves my point. I had saved less than a handful of articles to read later. 3 years ago, completely failed to meet my own self-imposed assignment, and thus they sat. So this awful habit of intending to read things or informing myself on articles is what I shall call intellectual FOMO. Socrates may have said that he was the wisest man alive, for he knew only one thing, and that one thing he knew was that he knew nothing. Well, I know that I know nothing, and that does not make me the wisest woman alive. It makes me incredibly anxious. You see, the rise of content abundance has made knowledge instantly accessible and thus incredibly overwhelming, while simultaneously making it much harder for us to consume meaningfully. Perpetual publications of digital articles remind us just how ignorant we are. For me, it's like, oh, I didn't know that about foreign policies or world economics or this global socio-political history. And then I get distracted and think, oh, I don't know what books are popular right now. And scrap that, I've suddenly realised I've fallen behind on my comprehension of Victorian literature and the Industrial Revolution. What's happening in the White House right now? And what does that acronym stand for? And how am I supposed to manage my brain and my time and my business when I can't get my head around human beings acting like comic book villains with their audacity, and everyone's just letting them get away with it and we can't do anything? It's a lot. And what's worse is that if you admit that you're not entirely clued up on something, or you make a mistake, people online in particular, and in real life, are very quick to call you lazy and ignorant and too self-involved, and you're accused of not caring or not trying to care about something. So this is going to be a video all about getting it out of our heads, talking about how we're going to handle intellectual FOMO and the abundance of knowledge. But before we get into that, let's take a deep breath in and talk about something wholesome for a second here, which is today's sponsor, which is Craftsy, which will come back again because they're a wholesome little sponsor. Craftsy is an online community and resource where millions of crafters and makers and DIY enthusiasts can learn new or improve their existing creative skills. So whether you're interested in learning how to draw or sew or do yoga or cook and bake or do woodwork, Craftsy has over 2,000 exciting classes led by talented and friendly experts who will inspire you with their wisdom and their passion. As I said last time, I don't take any advantage of living in the beautiful city of Edinburgh, and I've always wanted to learn how to do mixed media sketches, which I've started trying to do. I'm not ready to show you now, they are not good. But I started this hobby by watching Mark Taro Holmes' class on Craftsy. And it's not just video classes. Members have access to Craftsy's live streaming tutorials where expert instructors share their tips and answer questions directly with the audience. So if you want to find the joy of making something and getting away from doom scrolling for a while, then I have an awesome deal for you. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the description box down below will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. It's valid to new members only, but it's the first 1,000 that click the link down below, so get in there whilst you can. Thank you so much, Craftsy, for offering this lovely, lovely joy in this world where it feels a little bit heavy. It's just a nice little break from that. So let's get back to information hoarding. Why do we hoard information? that we will never use. Technically, it's because we don't have an excuse not to know about certain things, which leads to the overwhelm. Technically, I have no excuse to not know about the dynasties of China, and the 3 kingdoms, and the 16 kingdoms, and the northern and southern dynasties, and the 5 dynasties, and the 10 kingdoms, etc. Because if I wanted to know about it, I could just Google it and read about it. But I don't have the capacity to also read about that and stay on top of events and understand the political chaos spreading across the world, as well as my own research topics and researching everything that I need to know about. Many of us hoard information because we all have the good intention of wanting to be less ignorant, but that results in us hoarding more saved tabs and more books until later. The expectation of others is a bit too overwhelming for us to manage. We can't possibly care about everything and know about everything that anyone cares about. So we fall behind on basically anything we try and learn about, and we burn out into a state of not even trying in many cases. So during my PhD, I definitely hit a breaking point with the amount of secondary, tertiary, and, let's face it, quaternary reading I needed to do. You see, every single paragraph that I was writing had about 15 to 20 different topics of exploration within it. And then each of those topics required citations for at least 3 to 6 different papers. So I had tabs upon tabs of different papers that I didn't need to download because they weren't primary or secondary reading, but I did need to look over them to be able to justify citing them. And my poor laptop at one point had over 97 tabs on it. One of my footnotes was so extensive that it became a running joke between my supervisors, and it's referred to as the infamous footnote 4 because it was just so long and extensive and not necessary at all. So we hoard these tabs and these unread articles and the books out of fear of losing something valuable, out of the fear of losing the proof that we cared enough at one point in time to actually work to find the resources. But then we also have the problem that finding the resources, it causes our brain to release a dopamine hit, which rewards us for finding the information and equating that to the success of having consumed and learned the information, which is not the same thing. This illusion of knowledge, as it's called, is a cognitive bias, which results in us feeling as though we know more or understand better than what our actual knowledge allows us to assert. Now, in more cases than not, the illusion of knowledge makes people act more confidently about a subject than they are deserving. You will likely have heard this discussed more as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Again, a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their abilities in areas where they lack expertise. There was a study which sort of sums it up. This study involved middle school students who were given a kind of straightforward math problem which said, imagine you are on a ship, and on the ship there are 26 goats and 10 sheep. Now calculate the captain's age. So, kind of astonishingly, 75% of students gave a numerical answer, despite the question obviously not relating to any of the evidence given. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. People would rather give an answer blindly than admit they don't know, or even think critically and observe that they're pulling conclusions and understandings out of their bottoms. And we see this on social media all the time. People will pull understandings of issues out of nothing. People will rather read headlines and secondary hand commentary on an issue than read about the issue themselves. And I think we're seeing an increase in Dunning-Kruger effect. Because of the societal pressures, we feel to be knowledgeable about everything that anyone could possibly care about in the world. The infinite scroll presents to us infinite problems and infinite holes of knowledge, and then infinite areas of study and curiosity, and thus we get scared. We're scared of other people's judgment that we don't know about something. We're scared of the FOMO of not knowing about a subject that everyone's talking about. And we're scared of how other people will perceive us for not knowing about it. We're scared of falling behind on the news, and ultimately we're just scared of not knowing. And so we accumulate to try and comfort it. We hoard, but we don't engage because we are so mentally burned out, understandably so. We don't engage because sometimes we have other pressing issues that we need to study, or other subjects we'd rather read about. And sometimes we don't read about it because we don't want to admit to ourselves that the topic is too complicated for us to understand right now, easily. We'd have to do more reading into it, and we don't have the capacity to do more reading into it. And people are scared to say that they don't know something because, quite frankly, the people who do know even a little bit about something will take the opportunity to insult and berate and mock them, which discourages them from trying then. But I have to kind of remind myself that knowledge is for digesting and not for collecting. And just like food, we can't overeat without paying the price for it. It will make us ill, it'll make us bloated and unhealthy. So I had to kind of confront myself here. I pulled back up the Notion page, the read for later Notion page, and I wiped it clean of the 3 years of articles. There's 4 articles from 3 years ago. And I decided to try and reuse it. So now every time I find an article that I'd like to read, I'll add it to the page. But every Sunday I have an alarm set for the evening, and if I haven't read it by Sunday evening, it gets wiped off. Now, ideally, I'd like to move away from reading anything online, quite frankly, and kind of stick to reading books that are collecting dust in my flat than online media, because I think I have a lot of screen problems. But I do like some, there are some gems online like Substack and Flipboard. I really like those. So if you don't check those out, highly recommend. But yeah, that's what my thoughts are about intellectual FOMO and hoarding information, hoarding knowledge, as it were. Are you guilty of this too, or is it just me? Is it just me? Am I just a weirdo that's just talked to herself and like everyone's like, no, it's just you, you're just lazy, you're just pathetic? But if you do relate, what's your biggest intellectual FOMO? Like, what are you scared of not knowing about? Please leave it down below so we can all share what we're collecting information on but haven't really delved into enough yet. Or maybe we have delved in a lot and we're not giving ourselves credit for it, for how much we know. Let me know your intellectual FOMOs down below. Thank you as always to my Patreons for making this possible, and thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing or commenting if you're new. Check out my podcast, The Annotated Mind, and also the Substack of the same name. I also have my second channel down below if you're curious there. It's a bit more quieter there, but it's more self-helpy, as it were. But thank you so much, and as always, be happy and healthy, and remember, books save lives, so keep reading.